Guess who's back?
Welcome back to the channel. We are very excited post-draft, and we are going to get into our Dallas Cowboys draft review. A lot of things happened that nobody could have conceived were possible, so we're going to talk about all that. But first, if you are not subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe to Dos and Tres on YouTube. If you enjoy Dallas Cowboys and NFL content, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned because we have more coming down the pipe. So, starting off.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Starting off in the first round, pick 17. We talked about it in our other videos. RJ's dream scenario is CeeDee Lamb. I really don't know how it became possible.
I fantasize about every night leading up to the draft, and it's the law of attraction.
Sometimes you have to speak things into reality. I think it was just a matter of how the different teams in the NFL had these wide receivers graded, and we saw that kind of all over the board. I mean, Andrew Thomas was the first tackle taken. A lot of people had Jedrick Wills as the top tackle, and the same thing goes for the receivers. Once the Raiders took Henry Ruggs, then of course your brain starts going, okay, well, where are these other guys gonna fall?
And I said that, like, with the Raiders, I feel like via Vegas, Gruden always likes speed, and like the big time players. So I feel like they could easily go with Ruggs. And then when the Jets took Becton, they didn't take the receiver. It was like, everything just started. You could literally, I said, okay, this next team needs this, and it's likely it was gonna happen.
Really, it came down to the 49ers at 13. I think that was the next spot where you're like, okay, they could go Kinlaw, because the rumor before the draft was that they really liked Kinlaw, and they really did like Kinlaw. And afterwards, they said that they actually had Brandon Ayuk, who they took later in the first round, evenly graded with Lamb, but I guess they saw the value of Kinlaw more than the receiver at that point. So the Cowboys kind of lucked out. Once you got to Denver, they took wide receiver, but Judy was their number one guy, so then Lamb was the odd man out, and
Lamb was our number one guy.
The 6th overall prospect on the Cowboys board. And you know what? Whenever we were watching the draft together, Chason was also on the board, and I was already in my mind thinking the pick's going to be Chason because of how things have gone in previous years, and I was just preparing myself for disappointment.
I was thinking the same thing.
I was just like, when have they... I mean, they've passed up on prospects before, big-time prospects, and gone with the safe pick, but everything that we're hearing from Will McClay and everything that we're hearing from Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones post-draft is that they really did stick to what McCarthy said in some of his interviews was player over the scheme, which is what the complete opposite of what the Cowboys would draft before whenever Jason Garrett was leading this team, and Rod Marinelli wanted certain guys for his defense, and everybody had a lot of input. But in a draft where there was less investigation of players and you didn't really have as much insight, and then, I mean, it's a blinking light right in front of you. He is the best player on the board. He's a top 10 prospect. In the Cowboys' case, the 6th overall prospect. They had to pull the trigger.
And on Pro Football Focus, they had CeeDee graded as the 3rd best receiver to ever come through their system grading, behind Amari Cooper
and Jerry Jeudy. Yeah, Jerry Jeudy, I believe that they had over Amari, and Amari was 2nd, and then Lamb. So now you have 2 of the top 3 that they've ever graded. I'm going to say this multiple times. I'm not going to get too excited. One, because we don't even know when the season's going to start or if there's going to be a season, so that really sucks. And 2, in the first year for these prospects, somebody's going to pop. You just don't know who, and you don't know when, especially with receiver. Typically what we've seen is that they don't get going until the second half of the season, which is going to be completely fine. There's plenty of offensive firepower on the team already. But let's just talk about Lamb already. We've talked about him a lot, but very impressive at the catch point. One of the best. I believe he was 2nd in yards after catch average. He averaged over 21 yards per 12 yards per reception. 6'2", 190 pounds, 4'5", 140. This guy really has all the tools. He doesn't have that elite freaky speed like a Ruggs, but as far as the refinement of his tools, of everything else that a receiver needs to do, he's got it all. He can block, he's got return ability in the special teams. He can really provide a lot of juice to this offense whenever they were already juiced up.
Yeah, he's not great at like Ruggs with the speed, Judy with the route running technician, but he's really, 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 really good at a lot of things, which makes him, I felt, the best receiver all around coming into this draft. He was top 5 in broken tackles and yards after the catch, or yards per reception. Also, it was his top 5 in college last year. So. Speaks for itself.
And he has flexibility where he could play on the outside and be that big jump ball type receiver, or he can move into the slot. And I think the indications of what he's heard from the Cowboys so far is that he's going to man the slot, which is favorable for him because one knock, and it's always a knock on Big 12 receivers, is the quality of play of corners in that conference as far as pressing goes and just the overall quality of players there. So if he goes into the slot, he's going to see a lot less press coverage. He's going to be protected from that in his first year, and he's going to have all the room to operate and move around and do whatever he needs to do, which I'm sure he'll be going on the outside sometimes too. The Cowboys played a bunch of different formations out there, so far it looks like his primary responsibility.
I will say, for receivers, it's usually their first year. If they end up being one of the premier receivers coming out in the first round, yes, they do take a little bit to get going and stuff. But for the most part, it's really hard for a first round receiver to produce. But I will say, out of the past years, I can't remember a receiver, this talented of a receiver, getting drafted into this great of a situation as far as you have a developed quarterback, you have 2 established weapons in Amari and Gallup, and you have a great running back behind you, and one of the best pass blocking offensive lines last year. Mm-hmm. And so, no, I'm not expecting an immediate impact from right away, but I will say that this is the best situation you could possibly ask for as a rookie receiver coming in.
And that's what happens whenever you draft for the best player. It may not be that position of need, but he's going to be able to excel in a situation where not everything's going to be put on his shoulders. Whereas if they took another prospect, you're expecting an immediate return on the investment because they're going into and expected to be a full-on number 1 starter.
And to the people that said, or the very small amount of people that are saying, "Oh, we didn't need a receiver," yeah, we did. If you ask who's the third receiver, as far as the depth chart go, there's a 1, 2, 3. No, we didn't have a third receiver.
Cedric Wilson would be your number 3 right now, and he's had injury concerns pretty much every single year that he's been with the Cowboys, or his entire career in the NFL. He's drafted by the Cowboys. And then outside of that, you got Noah Brown, a long list of guys who haven't really produced much in the NFL yet.
Our undrafted free agents that we drafted last year, mm-hmm. and practice squad guys, yeah.
So there was a bunch of competition to be the number 3, but there wasn't a true defined number 3, and the number 3 is generally on the field a lot. And then if you could look at a guy like Gallup and Cooper, who have both had injuries last season, if one of those guys goes out, now you have Lamb to slide in immediately. So he is really filling a void that the Cowboys did need. Maybe it wasn't the most glaring one, but he is filling a need. And fortunately, as we continue down this list of picks, the Cowboys filled every other need, so it doesn't really matter except for one, but we'll get that to that.
This was I feel like with this, it was, yes, they went BPA, best player available at each round, but it literally, from there, it matched up with BPA and need. They kind of just coincided together. It was great.
So, moving on from CeeDee, the exciting pick, we're going to round 2, pick 51, and another player that I don't think the Cowboys, according to Jerry Jones, there was a 1% chance to him. I don't know if he pulled that number out of his butt or what, but he said there was a 1% chance in their draft models that they saw this player being there at 51, and that is Trevon Diggs, the cornerback from Alabama, who I think would have been in consideration at pick 17, which was the indications that we heard from pre-draft, depending on how the board shook out and what the thought process was. If there wasn't a blinking light like CeeDee there at 17, he's got all the measurables. Former wide receiver, as we've said before, so whenever he's playing the ball, he's almost like running the route with the corner, which sometimes with the receiver, which sometimes will get him in trouble. He's not super refined in that aspect, but whenever you look at the scheme that the Cowboys are trying to run this year, which we started to hear rumblings about post-draft, they want to be press man, and Trevon Diggs has all the measurables and strength and height, length, everything, freaky length at the corner position that you need to do that. So he may not be your full-fledged starter on the outside year one. From what we've seen so far, all the bodies that they're bringing in from corner, because they've already signed a couple more guys post-draft, it's going to be a free-for-all to see who's going to be playing on the outside and who's going to be those top 3 spots. But Diggs also adds in special teams. He can return punts, which CD can also, which I think is a recurring theme in this entire draft. All these guys can contribute on special teams in their first year. So if they're not on the field as starters, then they're going to be able to make an impact in another way. I don't know how he fell this far, but I mean, also Christian Fulton was on the board at that time, but we already knew that they preferred Diggs over Fulton at that point. So I think that the Cowboys were very surprised, and I was happily surprised that he made it all the way to 51, especially whenever you saw a run of defensive backs going just before that pick in the second round.
Yeah, like we said, as far as after Okudah, CJ was after the second quarterback. It's basically off personal preference as far as teams go, and yes, Diggs press man heavy scheme. And we one thing that jumped out at me when I was watching him, I was like, damn, he tracks this ball like he is playing a receiver immediately as soon as he sees it. It's like I know I'm the receiver now, and that's one thing that obviously I felt like it was a little bit of scheme though, and I don't knock him Byron for not having a lot of interceptions or whatever. That wasn't a problem with me, but for them to let Byron walk and then say we're investing in a guy that is this great at ball skills, is invested in as far as great at tracking the ball, length, size, everything that goes with wanting having attributes, turning the ball over and creating turnovers, it speaks volume to so this is what we want.
And post-draft, the coaches have said as much. They're looking for guys that can make an impact in turning the ball over. They want the traits in a player that can get those turnovers and give the ball back to the offense. So now we're down into the third round. Pick 82, Neville Gallimore, the defensive tackle from Oklahoma. This guy is just freaky as far as his athleticism goes. He's a 300-pound guy, and he ran a 4.79 40. That's on par with a lot of quarterbacks, so he's going to be able to keep up in the backfield with all these guys. And he uses that speed working down the line. You can see whenever you watch him on film, he really uses that speed to his advantage and can work down the line of scrimmage and fill those gaps and stop the run. And the Cowboys actually had Gallimore higher on their board than Diggs. Whenever it came to the second round, I believe Gallimore was one spot higher than Diggs, but I think they saw the run on defensive backs and said this is a more glaring need. Mm-hmm. So in that part, they did go best need available, and they took Diggs. And I mean, again, the Cowboys, they rolled the dice and they won again, and they had a second round graded player fall to them all the way in the third round. I don't know what kind of luck was going for the Cowboys in this draft, but they got everything they wanted. Gallimore is not going to be the immediate starter unless there's injury. Again, Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe are there. Just Tristan Hill, the draft pick from last year, is there. But he's going to be solid in that rotation, and who knows? I mean, he could transcend and go above one of these guys. He's definitely more of a 3 technique than a 1 technique. But I feel like right now he's going to be in a heavy competition with Tristan Hill, mm-hmm. who needs that motivation mm-hmm. to go beyond what he did last year, because it wasn't very much.
Some people would say we got better value in the third round with Gallimore than what we did in the second, picking Tristan last year. Now that's no knock on Tristan or anything, but yeah, it's something obviously something we need to see. But yeah, one thing that jumped out about Gallimore is that his quick first step, he's a little bit kind of like lost, I guess, when he really does blow up the play. That's something that he just needs to get better at, but he's got all the traits and everything that you want as a disruptor right in the middle. So he can be the third defensive tackle easily.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to the fourth round. I love this pick because he was right there on the board, and he's a guy that, if you watched the draft show, Kevin Turner had been talking about this guy from the very first episode, talking about 2020, and that is Reggie Robinson II from Tulsa. If you were to build a corner, this guy would be it. He's got all the measurables, 6'1". He had a 4.4 40, long arms, and he's just a perfect build. And going back to that press man that the Cowboys are looking for, he said it himself, post-draft, he said, I'm an in-your-face type of corner. I like to press. That's what I did most of my college career. I get in your face and I harass you on the line of scrimmage. So he's physical. He loves that aspect of his game, and he's competitive. He may be one of those Jordan Lewis types that is going to go up against the Cowboys receivers in practice and is going to piss them off and ruffle some feathers. But you need that on your team. You need an attitude, especially with a new coaching staff. You need leaders, young leaders, to show up, because there wasn't much young leadership last year, unfortunately. So they need an infusion of veteran and young leadership. I love this guy. I always like the later round picks for some reason. I remember whenever Xavier Woods in 2017, our last draft review that we did, that was my favorite pick of that draft. I think Reggie Robinson might be my favorite pick of this draft. Hopefully he turns out. And the Cowboys have a really good track record of turning late round corners or mid round corners into starters. If you look at Anthony Brown, he was a 6th round pick. He's about to be one of your potential starters this year.
Jordan 3rd.
Cheeto was a 2nd round, which I mean, you can say what you want about him, but he has been a starter for us. Really, Reggie, he put it all together this final season in college. He didn't have any interceptions all the way up until this year, his senior season, and he had 4. And then every year on special teams, he's had a block kick. So he played 4 seasons, he's had 4 block kicks. So he'll be that gunner position for John Fossil's special teams. So again, adding to special teams, and has the potential to be in the starting lineup, whether that's by transcendent performance in camp or if there's an injury. So
he's tall, strong, fast, has everything, traits for the press scheme you want to play. Mel Kiper said that he was the most improved cornerback this past year in college football. And Will McClay was on the radio yesterday, and he said, there's a pet cat that you want that's like your favorite coming into the draft that, like, you could get in the later rounds, but it's like, man, if we could really get this guy, we love this guy. This guy has the potential to really be something good. And he said, there's some players like that, but this one was his top player right here, Reggie Robinson.
So then, as we go down again in I believe it was the 4th round, or it was the first pick of the 5th round or the final pick of the 4th round. There were a lot of points in this draft where I was just like, please trade up. There's this certain player that I want. Go up. Now, this wasn't exactly the player that I was thinking, but whenever you connect the dots, I mean, if this player pans out and the health is all right, which I believe the Cowboys and the player believes the health is all right, well, then they just completely ended the competition, and then they have a true starter already plugged into a very big position of need, and that was Tyler Biadasz, or as Cowboys fans have started calling him, which is a lot easier, Tyler Badass. You could just call him that. It's a little hard to pronounce his name, but he's a center from Wisconsin. I will always take an offensive lineman from Notre Dame, Wisconsin, or Iowa, and whether they're a late round or not, those guys are just coached and know how to play the line, and they're very, very smart.
While they're up there, man, just breeds them.
This was a McCarthy pick all the way. He was the guy who really wanted to trade, and guess who they traded with? Philadelphia. They had the final 2 picks, I believe. It was either the last 2 picks of the 4th or the last pick of the 4th and the first of the 5th, but they traded up with Philly, and they gave up their 5th round in 2020, one of 2 that they had, plus a 5th in next year's draft, which will be replaced with a compensatory pick that they'll get from one of the outgoing free agents. So it's almost like nothing ever happened. But Tyler Biadasz, the reason that he fell so far was health. This past year in 2019, he was playing through a hip and a shoulder injury, which was found out at the end of the season. But according to him, in his post-draft interview, he said he's 100% and ready to go. Of course, players are going to always be more optimistic, but I hope he's right.
Yeah, but you got to remember, because of everything going on, teams weren't able to dive too deep into it, which they probably would have. So maybe this is another reason why he fell to them. But hey, it's just the luck of the draw, the situation, everything going around. Things happen for a reason, and lo and behold, we got one of the best run blocking centers for the past 3 years that's been graded. And if everything checks out, there will be a competition in training camp for the center job between 3 guys, and he has as good as any chances any of the other veterans to win it.
I think he has the edge right now, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But first, he's 6'5", 315 pounds. In 2017, he was a freshman All-American, first team All-Big Ten in 2018 and 19 in sophomore and junior seasons, and then he won the Remington Trophy as a unanimous All-American his junior season. So again, Pro Football Focus, like RJ said, they graded him very highly, and that he only allowed 22 pressures in his entirety, his full 3 seasons playing. So, of course, he's going to get compared to Travis Frederick because of the Wisconsin thing and the Cowboys.
A little bit bigger than him, right? Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not going to get my hopes up. But I really think if you look at it, we were talking about the competition for center. I think this really narrows it down. Connor McGovern, his position that he played a majority in college was guard. Connor Williams, he played tackle. They moved him to guard. Are you going to switch him to center again because they mentioned him? I wouldn't want to do that. The Cowboys have gotten in trouble moving players from positions all over the place. I really think it's going to be Tyler and Looney competing for the spot. Mm-hmm. Now, whenever that competition starts, we don't really know, but I think he has the edge right now. It's going to be him and Looney, and then at guard, it's going to be the Connor Williams and Connor McGovern. Who's going to come out on top, and whoever loses is going to be your swing tackle and then your swing guard, because that's what Looney was whenever he wasn't starting this past season. So, love this pick. If the health is all right, then the Cowboys just really, really killed it when I didn't think they were actually going to take an offensive lineman.
So up to this point, Dallas has drafted CeeDee, oh my gosh, Diggs, Gallimore, Robinson, Taylor Badass, and that's 5 players graded in the top 100 of PFF's draft board and a lot of people's other draft boards. So we got 5 players in the top 100. CeeDee was the 6th overall. Diggs was the 31st overall, and we got him at 51. And Gallimore was the 51st, and we got him at 82.
And it doesn't stop there, because if you go into this next pick, I don't know how this guy fell so far. Or, I mean, you can kind of connect the dots and see why he did, but, I mean, I don't see how many teams, GMs passed on him based off of why I think he fell. And that is in the 5th round, pick 179, Bradley Anae, the defensive end out of Utah. Just whenever you thought the Cowboys weren't going to come out with an edge player when they really needed it, somehow he fell in their laps. This guy was graded in 3rd to 4th round. I remember whenever I was doing mock drafts, I would be taking him in the 3rd round. So to get him in the 5th, it's just really unbelievable. The knock on him is he had a slow 40, I believe it was a 4.92, 4.90. Or maybe in the 5s, but it was his measurables, his traits is what dropped his stock. But man, you cannot ignore the production that this guy put on the field. And whenever he was a sophomore in 2017, he became a starter. He didn't play much his freshman year, but once he became a starter, 39 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. That was his first year starting. Next year as a junior, taking it up another notch, 51 tackles, 15.5 for loss, 8 sacks, 3 pass breakups, and a forced fumble, and he earned first team All Pac-12 honors. This past year, his senior season, again, he's taking up another one notch, 41 tackles, 14 for loss, 13 sacks, and another first fumble. He was a first team All Pac-12 for the 2nd year in a row, and then a consensus first team All-American. How do you ignore all that production and let a guy fall that far? I don't care if he has short arms or if he's slow. There's a reason that he's winning. He's going up against elite competition. Oregon produces some really good offensive tackles. He probably faced them a few times every year.
He faced Austin Jackson, gave him some troubles, who Miami took it in the 1st round.
Yeah. He's got all the tools. Whenever you look at, okay, so if I look at a Chason was a freak that I want, a freak athlete. Anae's not a freak athlete. But then if you look at Chason's moves, he didn't have all the moves. Bradley Anae has all the moves. He can bend. He's got every kind of dip, grip, everything, swim, whatever. He's very violent with his hands. He has all that. So I'm willing to take a chance on the guy. I think that other teams probably should have taken the chance on this guy. But a team that, like the Cowboys, who had a very big need at defensive end, he just fell into their laps, and they were happy to pick him. At worst case, I think he'll develop into a quality left defensive end for the Cowboys if his speed does hold him back. But man, he has a lot of potential, and then putting him with Jim Tomsula and that very stacked defensive line group, that if they get back guys like Gregory and Aldon Smith, that they're reinstated, I mean, there's going to be great competition, and he's got a lot of great veteran leaders and coaches to learn from. So love this pick.
And I feel like in the past it was like draft for need, even if he's kind of a project player. And I obviously now looking at that, like, that was so stupid. I hated that. This draft was full of players that have produced, have quality traits, just everything you want in guys. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't put it past if Reggie and Diggs both start this year. I wouldn't put it past it. And
it could happen to the detriment of some other players, because we've heard that the Anthony Harris prefers bigger corners, so maybe, unfortunately for Jordan Lewis, he's going to fall into that category that he was with Chris Richard, where he's going to have to overcome his measurables to be a starter. But before we get more into that, let's move on to the final pick of this draft, and that was in the 7th round. Ben DiNucci. The Cowboys did not have a 6th round pick, so Ben DiNucci, the quarterback from James Madison, again another McCarthy pick. DiNucci played at Pitt before transferring to James Madison. McCarthy's very, very familiar with that area. I believe they actually met each other in an elevator, so they knew each other. He's very accurate with the football. He likes contact. He did a lot of interesting things for sure in his James Madison season this last year. But at the end of the day, I think he's just really good competition for Cooper Rush, because Cooper Rush does not impress. I think really Mike White just was super, super garbage, and it really made Rush look a little bit better. And DiNucci, I believe he completed 70% of his passes this last season. He's much more mobile than Cooper Rush. And whenever you're looking at the offense, the way it runs through Dak, I believe DiNucci imitates that much more than Rush would if he was if he was forced into the starting role. So, and then we heard that the Cowboys wanted to take a quarterback.
Yeah, he had the 5th best deep ball accuracy behind Tua and Burrow this past year in college, and I feel like, yeah, exactly what you were saying as far as the offense goes and everything. It's like, he replicates that a little bit more, and he seems like the guy that's more, I think, on both sides of the ball coming in training camp, you're going to be able to cut down the cornerbacks with this guy being in there, being on the second team, and then with on the other side of the ball with Diggs and Reggie Robinson, you're going to be able to really cut down the other receivers and say, okay, y'all don't. Yeah.
It's good competition. And there were rumblings that the Cowboys wanted to take a quarterback in day 2 or 3. I'm really, really glad that they took one with the final pick. It wasn't a heavy investment, especially with all the value that they got in other picks. It just really worked out perfectly. They were able to pick their guy out of that small group of quarterbacks that were still available on the board. So that's a full rundown. CeeDee Lamb, Trevon Diggs, Neville Gallimore, Reggie Robinson II, Tyler Biadasz, Bradley Anae, and Ben DiNucci. Right now, we're looking at the class and we're saying great, but we won't really know until probably year 2 or 3. But man, they hit almost every need. But now I just want to go into and ask RJ and myself, what were maybe some of the disappointments in this draft? I think starting off, looking at the needs. So the needs that we highlighted in our previous video were edge, corner, safety, and wide receiver. So if you go by who they drafted, the only one they did not address was safety. And man, it was breaking my heart in the 2nd round whenever Delpit went, and then right after him, Antoine Winfield went. I was like, man, the dream is over as far as those guys go, because I think at 51, that would have been incredible to get either one of those guys. It didn't happen. They were able to get Diggs. Then going into the 3rd round, they picked Gallimore, but Terrell Burgess, the other safety, he was probably the next guy after them that I really wanted. He has a lot of flexibility. He could also play nickel corner, so I thought, okay, maybe the Cowboys might value him a lot more than one of these other defensive linemen or something because of that flexibility. They didn't take him there. They took Gallimore, which is fine. But, again, safety right now, all we have is HaHa Clinton-Dix, and then we have Xavier Woods, who's entrenched as a starter. The other starter, free safety, you want to slot HaHa in there, that's fine, but I don't think he's the guy I would want to depend on.
One player that is excited and should hopefully take total advantage of this, considering he had a good preseason last year, is Donovan Wilson, and I really hope that he sees that as it's basically, if you want to talk about the most player with the biggest upside and the biggest chance to win a starting position this coming season, with not drafting the free safety and being so unsure these past couple of years, it's him. He has the most upside coming into this training camp to go ahead and, hey, it's my job. It's really my job to win. to go out there and show something finally.
And then one of the new defensive back coaches, Maurice Linguist from Texas A&M, he was at Texas A&M the same time as Donovan Wilson. So again, connecting the dots, he may have more of an opportunity this time around his second season than he did in his first. And then also post-draft, we heard Will McClay said that we have a couple corners that we think could play safety. Immediately, I thought Cheeto, because Cheeto played safety at Colorado when he came out. That was one of the things that I really liked about him. He was kind of a jack of all trades. That he could play in the secondary. So maybe he moves. His issue has always been seeing the ball, but whenever he sees it, he can attack it. So at safety, he can see it, and he's a good tackler. So
he's fast. He's good at breaking down the ball and stuff. I just think, he just wasn't being used right. And again, that goes to the thing, scheme. No, you put your players in the best position to succeed. You do not say, this is what we want you to do, and we don't care if you're either good at it or not good at it. We have to get you to do this. No, that's not the way it works.
My next disappointment, I don't want to bang on the third round pick, but because I like Gallimore, it's not about the player, it's about the situation. So taking Gallimore in the third round whenever there were other positions available like Burgess, it kind of devalues, and we've already started going this route. I mean, after last season, it devalues Tristan Hill last year because of his performance, and you're basically drafting Gallimore, who I think could be better than Hill. And then maybe it's just a wasted second-round pick. And whenever you have a wasted first-round pick in Taco and then potentially a wasted second-round pick who were your top picks in the 2017 and 2019 draft, that just sucks. But
there's a new era.
It is what it is. And maybe Tristan Hill is motivated by this and he takes it up another notch. I really do hope so, because Dontari Poe and Gerald McCoy are short-term veteran fixes.
Yeah, those are one-year guys.
In a perfect world, Gallimore and Hill could be your guys going into the future if they rise up to the occasion. So those were kind of the things. RJ, you got anything that kind of sticks out to you?
Oh man, I think Reggie's going to start this year.
I hope you're right. I mean, if he does, then that's incredible. I mean,
you got to think about it when we drafted going into 2017, Cheeto, Xavier, Jordan, they should have been starting from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I don't think these coaches will make the same mistake. These guys are winners, and Reggie's a dog, and you don't keep him on a leash. You let him go. Really,
I think right now the guy that is in the cornerback group that they have right now, because they also signed yesterday Daryl Worley, who was formerly of the Panthers and the Raiders, and again he fits the build of the 6'1" press corner. There's going to be a lot of competition. They also had Maurice Kennedy. I think the only guy who really has an advantage right now in that room is Anthony Brown, because he started every year that he's been in the league. The only reason he didn't play much last year was because of injury. And whenever he plays on the outside, I think he's a great outside corner. Maybe they move him back to the slot. I don't know. But I think he's the only entrenched guy who has the advantage. Everything else is going to be free game. Is Cheeto going to be open to moving to safety in his final year before he gets a new contract? I don't know. That's going to be an interesting situation there. Do they get a deal done with either him or Jordan before the season starts, just to have that extra insurance going into the following season, because both of their contracts are going to be up? I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting once camp actually does get going. But I think we can both say we both really, really love this draft. A lot of big surprises and great luck. But they filled a lot of needs with quality players. And I hope that it really does pan out. I'm not going to get my hopes too high because we won't know until they actually get on the field. But if you go by positions and needs, they filled the hole. So it was a perfect draft for them.
Yeah. And I feel like, there's always, we got CeeDee, like that's phenomenal. It's like 10 out of 10, great and everything. And I feel like it's not being, usually like there's a lot more camaraderie. We'll bring them, like with Dez and stuff, we'll bring them into the press conference and have press. We can't do that right now, so there's really not, there's not that vibe to go along with it, but that, man, this was such a great pick, but it just doesn't, you can't do anything.
Yeah, the next thing we'll be looking for is what his jersey number is going to be. Is it going to be 10 or 88 or something else? We don't really know yet. But I think that pretty much covers it. That was our 2020 Dallas Cowboys draft review. If you liked the video, please leave a like. If you have any comments or have any thoughts about the Cowboys draft, please leave a comment below. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the button around this area right here. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yo, I ain't here for the money,